While the media does rush to condemn the death of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, few in the press have given its background much attention. One America's Pearson explains.
The disappearance and death of Jamal Khashoggi has riveted media around the world. But while the American press has spilled ink over countless pages of outrage, disbelief, and blame over the journalist's death, they've ignored some critical facts about the man who wasn't a U.S. citizen and didn't even die on U.S. soil. Nevertheless, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and numerous others have dedicated their front pages to sympathy pieces for a man who believed in creating an Islamic caliphate to rule the world. One America News spoke with Virginia Senator Richard Black, who explained that Khashoggi was deeply embedded with Islamic extremists.
Khashoggi definitely was with the Muslim Brotherhood, which wants to impose Islamic law and require everybody to renounce their religious faith and adopt Islam throughout the world. So that's not a good thing, but it was typical within Saudi Arabia. It was nothing exceptional.
But that makes sense, because this story was never really about Khashoggi, but instead about firing a devastating shot at Donald Trump's presidency. The media are hoping to use the attack to discredit President Trump and paint his administration as uncaring and amoral for its close ties to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Even though this same media, including the Washington Post, has stood quietly by for years as the Saudis massacre tens of thousands of innocent Yemeni civilians in their proxy war with Iran. But now the media has some ammo, and they're using it. For one, Trump has openly embraced the lucrative sale of weapons to the kingdom, suggesting up to 1 million American jobs could be on the line if the deal goes south. Not only that, but Trump's very first trip abroad after becoming president was to meet the Saudi king in Riyadh at the urging of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Going all the way back to World War II, the U.S. has maintained close ties with Saudi Arabia. But now that Trump is in office, the radical left is suddenly using his openness with the kingdom against him.
Keep in mind, every administration going back to Franklin Roosevelt has been a close ally of Saudi Arabia, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter what. And it's all about money. Saudi Arabia is swimming in money, and we want it.
Senior Democrats like Representative Adam Schiff are already claiming Trump isn't being hard enough on Saudi Arabia and that Congress must do his job for him. But in their rush to condemn President Trump, the mainstream media is forgetting crucial details about the man who was good friends with Osama bin Laden and who had close ties to al-Qaeda. When it was revealed 19 of the hijackers on 9/11 were Saudi, Khashoggi urged the kingdom not to cooperate with the U.S. in the investigation. This is a man who did not like the United States and frequently worked hand in hand with America's enemies. He worked against the freedom of the press, and many reports suggest he was actually the leader of the Saudi Muslim Brotherhood. And when Osama bin Laden went into hiding in Pakistan, Khashoggi turned to Turkey, where his calls for an Islamic state were openly welcomed. No wonder then that Turkey is stoking the fires against Saudi Arabia following Khashoggi's death.
There's some friction between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Turkey is a big supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, and Saudi Arabia cut ties with the Brotherhood in 2014. They felt rather threatened by them.
Saudi Arabia is an extremist state and one that supports radical Islam, but still feels uneasy getting behind the Muslim Brotherhood. Khashoggi was critical of this, believing the Crown Prince wasn't going far enough to implement fundamental Islamic rule. Ultimately, that criticism could have led to his death.
The Crown Prince does not like criticism. He was killed because he was reporting on the actions of the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince summarily confined about 40 people or 400 people who were his political enemies. No trials, no due process or anything. Held them as prisoners and extorted some $100 million from them in order to be released. And so he reported on things like that.
Turkey is no friend to the press, imprisoning and torturing hundreds of journalists and even murdering dozens since the early 90s. So it says a lot that Jamal Khashoggi felt comfortable enough to publish his views there. The investigation isn't over, and though it's not certain what the results will be, one thing is clear. The Democrats aren't done trying to lay the blame for this latest fiasco squarely at President Trump's feet. For One American News, I'm Pearson Sharp.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.